Hi guys, you're welcome back to Sew with Abby channel. In this video we'll be learning how to draft, cut and sew an off-shoulder princess that bustier. If this is what you are interested in, then keep watching. Let's get started. These are the materials I'll be making use of, and I'm going to be cutting directly on my fabric. As you can see, my fabric is folded into two because I'm cutting the front piece separately, and it's my bust measurement divided by 4 plus 5 inches extra. Now this is my starting line, and I'm just going to go ahead and measure all my horizontal measurements. Now I'm going to go up about 5 inches. This is depending on how off you want your off shoulder to be, and from there I'll start my measurement. Now my armhole is 7.5. I got this by dividing my bust measurement by 6 plus 1.5 inches. Next is the bust point, 9.5, then under bust 13, and then the waistline, which is 16 plus 1 inch seam allowance. With my ruler now, I'll rule a straight line across. The next thing I'm going to measure is my neckline. To get this neckline, I divided my shoulder measurement, which is 15 by 2. It gave me 7.5, and then I deducted 1.5 inches from that 7.5. So I had 5.5 inches for my neckline. To get my armhole curve, I'll measure my bust measurement divided by 4 plus 2 inches seam allowance, and then I'll connect this to the neck point, and here I have my armhole curve. The next thing to do is to start taking our darts. To take your darts, you need your bust palm measurement, which is also known as nipple to nipple measurement. Now my bust palm measurement is 7 inches divided by 2, that's 3.5. Now I'm going to add ½ inch for seam allowance, which made it 4 inches, and then I'll come to my under bust line and deduct ½ inch from what I have at my bust point, which will give me 3.5. I'll also measure the 3.5 at my waistline, and then I'll use ruler to connect the dots together. So on my armhole curve, I'm going to come down by 2 inches starting from my neck point, and then I'll connect it to the bust point. But before then, I'll come down by ½ inch. I'll use my French curve to connect it. Now I'll come to the under bust line and measure 1 inch at this side. Then I'll measure 2 inches at the other side. And I'll go to my waistline and also measure the same thing, and then I'll connect the dots using my ruler. Now from this ½ inch I measured earlier, I'm going to use my French curve to connect the point there to my under bust line like this, and I'm going to do it to this other side as well. Now the next thing to do is to take that on our armhole area. So I'm going to come down by 1 inch here and make a mark. So on that point, I'm going to extend the line by that same 1 inch. This is to avoid shortage. I will use my ruler to make the extension, and then use my French curve to redraw my armhole like this, and then I'm going to connect from this new armhole to the point here. I'm going to use my French curve to make a connection there. I will go ahead now and input my round measurement. I already measured my bust, but then I'll come back here and measure whatever I have to replace it. This is to avoid shortage at the bust. Then I'll go to my waistline, divide my waist measurement by 4, and whatever I have there, I'll replace it. Is 3 inches. I'll replace it, and then I'll add my 2 inches seam allowance. I'll measure my neck depth. Remember, we already went up by 5 inches, so I'll just add 1 inch, making it 6 inches, and then I'll use my French curve to shape out sweetheart neckline. I will go ahead to cut now, but when cutting, don't forget that this will no longer be used. Now this is what my front pattern looks like. I'll go ahead to notch the under bust area. I'll do the same to the side panels as well. This is just for easy identification when stitching. Now, this is the center front and these are the side panels. For my back pattern, I have my fabric on fold, and the first thing I'll do is to measure 1.5 inches for zipper allowance. I'll measure this all the way down and use ruler to connect the dots together, and then I'll go ahead to rule out my horizontal measurement just like I did the front pattern, but here I'll only use the armhole line, the bust point and the waistline. I won't be needing under bust line, so I'll use my ruler to make straight lines. From the zipper allowance line, I'll measure my neck width, which is the 5.5 inches we measured at the front pattern, and then measure my bust plus seam allowance. This is to get our armhole curve. I will come to the waistline and measure the bust span, that is the nipple to nipple, which is 3.5 plus ½ inch, that's 4. I'll do the same at the bust point as well, 4 inches, and then I'll connect the dots together. In between, I'll mark ½ inch on both sides for the darts and then connect it to the bust point. Afterwards, I'll come to the armhole line and then measure 2 inches down just like we did at the front, and then I'll connect it to the bust point line. But before then, I'll come down by ½ inch. This is to eliminate any sharpness, and then I'll connect it together. The next thing I'll do is to measure my neck depth. Remember, we already measured 5 inches up, so I'll just add additional 2 inches, that is 7 inches for my neck depth, and then I'll use my French curve to curve out a U-shaped neckline. Now for this back piece, I don't want the dart to be a princess dart, so I want it to be a straight dart. So I'll just go ahead and connect this dart line. I'll extend this dart line to the neck line. Then I'll redraw the darts to meet with the previous one there. Alright, this is my new dart now. So I'll go ahead to input my measurements. I already measured my bust. I'll measure my waist divided by 4, and then I'll replace the 1 inch dart there, and then 2 inches seam allowance. At the waistline side of the zipper, I'll come in by ½ inch. This is to eliminate any bulging at the waist side of the zipper. So when I'm fixing my zipper, I'll be fixing it straight. I'll be fixing it in a slanted manner. So I'll clean off this line here and then cut my back pattern. The back pattern is ready, and here is the front pattern. The next thing I'm going to do is to cut out wording for this front pattern. So I'll fold out my wording into 2, place my side panel first, then cut it out in the desired shape I want it. For the center front, I made sure the wording did not reach the neckline. I left about half-inch space before I cut. I'll take this to the sewing machine now and stitch it accordingly. Alright guys, I'm done stitching and this is it. I also gave it a good press and then I notched the seams, and this is the final look. I also went ahead to stitch the back piece as well. So I'll go ahead now to join the lining to both the front piece and the back piece, and with that we've come to the end of this tutorial. Thanks for watching. If you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please do not forget to do so. Kindly like and share, and I'll see you in my next video.